Thank you, Carmen. Good morning and welcome to the Boulder Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I'm Scott Yeomans, your service associate today. My pronouns are he and him. I'm joined today by our minister, Reverend Dr. Barbara Coeyman. Today's music is provided by Carmen Sandim on the piano and Amy Austin as our hymn leader. You know, I do like the headset mic because I can turn my head and you can hear me. Today's tech team is Larry Sherwood on audio, Mary Stackpole on video, and Deborah Minch on Zoom. You are all welcome here today. In all the tapestry of languages, cultures, skin tones, shapes and sizes, gifts and challenges that come together in your uniqueness, you are welcome here. In all the ways you experience and express gender, in the beauty that is who you love and how you love, you are welcome here. In all the ways you make your living, in the places you are from, you are welcome here. With all of the traditions that inform your spiritual life, you are welcome here today. No matter how long you've been away, nor how soon you will return, you are welcome here. Whether you come with laughter in your heart or perhaps tears and sadness, you are welcome here. Please join us with a curious mind, a loving heart, and a willing spirit. Our fellowship is committed to being a center for spiritual exploration and justice making, to anti-racism and anti-oppression work within and beyond our congregation. If you're new here, we're glad you found us and hope that in this community, whether you're with us in person or virtually, you can experience the warmth and love we have to offer. Please come back a few times to really get to know us. And we have many opportunities during the week for social connection and spiritual growth. Those on Zoom can check out the links in the chat to help you get more connected. Those in person can stop by the welcome table in the foyer for information and our newcomer form. For those who are adventurous, there's a QR code in the back of the hymnal if you want to use that. To view a sample order of service for today on your phone, please scan the QR code on screens now or click the link in Zoom. Everyone on Zoom is welcome to stay for casual conversation following the service. If you're here in person today, you're welcome to join us for coffee and conversation in Fellowship Hall. Zoomies can also greet each other in the Zoom chat now, and if you're new to us in Zoom, do let us know. We like to know who's among us. And those of you here in the sanctuary, please take a moment to greet and welcome your neighbor. Hello. Could I have a little flourish? I hope you're all feeling welcome here this morning. If you have a chalice at home, I invite you to light it with us as Reverend Barbara lights our chalice here. And if you are, for those on Zoom, please let us know where you're from by saying chalice lit in and where you're located. Now, please join me in saying our chalice lighting words. We light this chalice, the warmth of love, the light of truth.
A good morning to everyone. So good to see each of you here today. If you weren't here, this would be a different congregation. Good morning, everyone. Do you hear that voice calling you, calling us? That voice which calls us together here today in this room, made holy by our presence and by the sacred breath we share in the singing and speaking and silence. That voice which calls us to remember that we are not alone and that we are inextricably linked to all life, woven in a vast tapestry of existence of which we are a powerful, integral, and holy part. And just as we have been called here today, we act as the voice, the heart, the hands of another call, the call to walk with the wanderers, sing and dance with the worshipers, proclaim the memory of those who have taken leave of us, wrap the despairing and the broken in the arms of love and community, and hold the hands of all who have broken our vows and come back again and again to the covenant and the work of justice, humility, and faithfulness. For this, we are here together today. So, my friends, come yet again. Let us worship together this morning and be glad. And as we share our gladness together, let's do so through singing. Our opening hymn in the gray hymnal is number 121, We'll Build a Land. This hymn is based on an ancient text in which the prophet Amos called folks to build a land for justice making. This is our call today to work for justice. Please rise in body or in spirit for hymn 121.
We'll build a land where we bind up the broken. We'll build a land where the captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised land that can be. Come, build a land where oysters and
I've been in a variety of non-Unitarian Universalist men's groups, mostly affiliated with the Mankind Project, a global organization. In these groups, we had rules and agreements that were developed collectively and provided a foundation for creating a sense of safety, accountability, and shared expectations. They included items such as no drug use before group. Thank you. They included items such as no drug use before group. Let someone know if you're going to be late or absent. And what is seen or heard here stays here. These rules and agreements didn't just sit around and gather dust either. They were reviewed annually, and at every meeting, there was an opportunity for the men to acknowledge whether they were in or out of integrity with the agreements. Yes, every meeting. This was a time to practice non-judgment, mutual support, as we witnessed one another sharing about what may have happened, such as not letting someone know that they were going to be late, and then recommitting to that agreement. Witnessing this again and again helped to create a sense of trust for the group, reinforcing expectations, and fueling growth from just a group of men into a community. A crucial component of being a community is a felt sense of safety. And a key agreement for safety is confidentiality, that last agreement I mentioned. And without it, I'm less likely to share something that might show me in a negative light. Or maybe it would mean I'm less likely to share something that I'm not ready to share beyond the circle of men. Without a sense of safety, I'm less likely to be vulnerable in the group. Keeping one agreement sets the expectation that other agreements will be kept. The repeated practice of keeping agreements builds trust. And this includes keeping the agreement to stay in relationship with one another, even when an agreement is broken. Breaking a promise, acknowledging the break, and then recommitting to the promise, as vulnerable and as embarrassing as it might be, weaves the group more tightly together. Creating a foundation for trust, accountability, and safety are key aspects of guidelines and agreements, covenants in a Unitarian Universalist sense. In the groups that you are in at the fellowship, what has your experience been of those agreements, those covenants? How have they shaped the group?
This is the time in our service when we share the personal, the joys, the concerns, the celebrations, the challenges, both in this room and online. If you wish to share a personal, I invite you to come forward here in the room and online into the chat, post briefly and speak briefly your joy or concern. I invite you to speak directly into the mic, hold the mic in front of you. And this is not a time for political announcements or other kinds of community agendas. This is about the personal. I invite you to come forward now, my friends, for the sharing of personal joys and concerns. Scott, let us place one more stone for all the unspoken. Perhaps that lies so deeply in our hearts that we're not hearing yet that still small voice. Let us remain as open as we can to that voice. Amen. So, friends, may we come together in a spirit of prayer, meditation, and intentional focus. I invite you to listen to this prayer by my colleague Maureen Kaloran. Here in this space, we are gathered, called by our longing for community, called to be together on this day. Here in this space, we gather, called to hold ourselves accountable to our values, to remind ourselves of hopes and dreams and possibilities, for which sometimes in the rough and tumble world of life can be hard to hold on to. Here in this space we are gathered, called to weave a web of human community. Here in this space, some of us have come in pain. We have heard about the health issues facing a relative who fortunately has returned home for continued healing. We have heard about the devastations caused by climate change in the southern part of this country, particularly in Asheville and in the southern eastern part, the destruction, the loss of life. Mother Nature aches for how she is being treated. We send prayers for those, not just in this congregation, related to this congregation, but all the families afflicted by the flooding. And some in the complexities of community building have come with joy bubbling in their heart. The memory of a mother on an anniversary, yes, of a death, but also fond memories of that relationship. The hope in a grandson going forward into life, into creativity and positivity. And so, my friends, this morning then, may we rejoice together, remembering the wisdom that says joys are multiplied when they are shared. Now, may our shared silence for a few moments be a blessing on our hearts, on this community, and may this blessing extend outward to grace the wider world. Let us be joined together for a few moments, not only in this room, but connected to our colleagues, our congregants on Zoom through the silence. Let us be in meditation for some moments. Amen, and blessed be. And friends, I invite you either to continue your meditating or to join in the meditative prayer, Spirit of Life, remaining in your seats. If you wish to see in the hymnal, it's number 123, Spirit of Life.
Each week, we remind ourselves of the abundance of our lives and of this community by giving half of our plate away to organizations that share our values. This week's half plate will go to our Gilbert Fund. It's the fellowship's fund that supports our social justice initiatives. The Social Justice Council helps distribute funds to activities such as climate justice, the Posadas, the Dios de los Muertos celebration, and the visiting delegation of Arapaho. This fall, a special focus remains on Lafayette's Youth Spaces project with Veronica San Gabriel. This project supports local Latinx youth with mental, social, and emotional wellness programs, creating a sense of community and creative outlets through physical activity, music, and art therapy. You can text your donation to the number on the screen, or for those of you here in person, place a donation in the offering plate as it passes. Please donate generously to support our commitment to finding justice and love for all.
For the work and witness of this congregation and the Gilbert Fund, your contributions are gratefully accepted and appreciated. Well, once again, good morning to everyone. I realize this is the first service in the season of fall, and doesn't the change in the weather feel delightful? It's just beautiful out there. You've probably gathered by now the theme of this service is covenant. I offer two brief readings. And by the way, I trust some of you have noticed that I like to set up a sermon with a reading, poetry, a passage from, in this case, UU Governance, to bounce off of to generate ideas for the sermon. So from a UU publication, Unlocking the Power of Covenant. No single concept is more central to our faith understanding than being in covenant. It is at the core of our identity. It is how we try to build and sustain beloved community. It is the foundation of our governance structures at all levels. Indeed, we have come to see that the very existence of Unitarian Universalism may very well depend on how our members, congregations, and the denomination understand, practice, and celebrate our covenant as expressed in the UUA bylaws. I have another very brief reading. I've actually referred to its author already, the ancient prophet Amos, who in the 8th century BCE issued a call to the nation of Israel to remain strong lest they be taken over by other forces. To keep their nation strong, the prophet Amos offered a series of directives to the nation, and the one that was most important for the nation and for our purposes is this. Amos asked his people, "Do two walk together except they be agreed?" Again, from Amos, "Do two walk together unless they be agreed?" I'll unpack that reading a little bit more in a few moments. Thus ends the reading for this morning. Following our conversation on spiritual practice 2 Sundays ago, today I want to explore the second grounding theme, as I call it, which I offer at the start of an interim ministry. Today, let's consider covenant. Covenants are promises, which lie at the core of Unitarian Universalism, as you just heard, at the core of organization as well as practice. Covenants are also present in many other corners of life. The concept of covenant, central to this free or liberal faith, central to building compassionate relationships in congregations and across the denomination. This is a covenantal faith. So for guests and newcomers among us, are you willing to show who you are? Any newcomers here this morning? For newcomers and visitors, I hope this reflection on covenant today gives you a good idea of what Unitarian Universalism is all about. And for you who consider yourself old-timers, I'll let you identify if you wish. Who are the old-timers? Okay. I hope I offer some ideas to expand your understanding of covenant. And to that, before I go further in offering you some information, I invite you to think on your understanding of covenant when you walked in the room this morning, and how that understanding may expand by the end of this service. And during social time, you all might want to tell someone else your understanding of covenant. You might want to talk about covenant a bit. So in talking about covenant today, you'll also get to know me better, because I refer to covenant often, as I encourage each group or committee or class here in the congregation to create a covenant. In the gray hymnal, if you want to turn now, you can find a reading about how covenant is central to free faith. Number 591 at the back of the gray hymnal is by James Luther Adams. We're not going to read it, I'm just pointing you to it. It's by James Luther Adams, who was a 20th century theologian. He wrote, "I call that church free, which enters into covenant with the ultimate source of existence." Adams calls us to create covenants that we can live with in the face of death as well as life. So, where did this stuff of covenant come from? Where did James Luther Adams get his ideas? He was a beloved teacher of many UU ministers in the second half of the 20th century. I never knew him, but many of my colleagues did study with him. Now, he didn't just make up covenant. He knew about his religious ancestors, the Pilgrims, who left Europe in search of religious freedom. Those Pilgrims also knew their scripture and their own religious ancestors, the prophets of ancient Israel, who, as we heard in that very brief reading about walking together, the prophets urged their people to create covenants among themselves and with their God. Among those ancestors, and prophets was the prophet Amos. You remember the prophets of old, don't you? Their job was to forecast and advise, to lay out a path to go forward. I guess they're a bit like modern pundits on TV shows, you know, without the shouting matches at one another. The prophet Amos called the nation of Israel to stand united to prevent their nation from being destroyed. Any overlays with today? I'll invite you to think on that. Amos gave Israel several points of advice in the form of questions. I read only the one concerning covenant, which I'll read again. Amos said, "Do two walk together except they be agreed?" Now, this wording may sound a bit archaic. What did Amos mean by this? What he meant was, do two or more people need to agree? Do they need common beliefs to walk and work together and prosper as a nation? We use this metaphor, walking together, today to express the concept of living, working, and loving together. Amos knew that walking together is relatively easy when we agree. You probably know that too. Amos calls us also to walk together when different members of a group see things differently. Amos knew that keeping covenants can be hard work. So many of us continue to ask this question today. How can humanity walk together, especially to ensure the survival of democracy in the United States? Persons of liberal mindset, that is politically, socially, religiously, are generally open to a diversity of beliefs and opinions in walking together, while conservative positions tend to prefer to walk primarily with people who are like themselves. The liberal way says, I'll walk with you, even if I don't always agree with you. Wouldn't we wish that modern political leaders understood and lived by covenant to improve working across these ever-widening political aisles that we seem to be developing? I invite introspection on your part. How do you, as a member of this liberal congregation, live up to this basic promise of walking with others, especially others you don't agree with? A thought question for you. Indeed, covenant lies deep in the heritage of liberal religion. Let's unpack it a bit more. A covenant is a promise, a mutual agreement for how we live together. Our pilgrim ancestors were known as people of the promise. Covenant was central. A covenant is not a contract. It's a mutual promise. Promises which create relationships. They don't define beliefs. They build connections among people. Thus it is our actions, that is how we live together, which are central. That is what keeps this free religion together, is deeds, not creeds. Deeds, not creeds. Remember that if you don't go away with anything else this morning. We are about deeds, not creeds. Deeds, actions that ask us to take personal responsibility. Not creeds, words possibly imposed from some outside authority and quite possibly irrelevant to life in the here and now. That's what the Pilgrims wanted to get away from, beliefs imposed from a higher authority. These promises are two-sided, promises for how we monitor our own actions and promises for how we hold others accountable for their actions. I can't emphasize this enough. Accountability is central to effective covenant keeping. Accountability means that anyone under any particular covenant speaks up when others in the covenant fall off the path of common values and habits, as Scott talked about in his reflection and the group that he participated in. Rather than thinking of accountability as calling out the other who has lost the path, more recently we try to think of accountability as calling in the other, calling back into the path of right relationships. Accountability is open and honest communication, not punitive reprimand that someone lost the path. Deeds, not creeds. Fundamentally different approach from more orthodox methods of religion, which many of us grew up with. A creedless religion may be a hard concept to grasp. My experience has been, however, that deeds build much stronger relationships than do creeds, because covenant asks personal commitments to monitor relationships with people and activities we work with from day to day. Deeds are much more tangible than creeds. And yet a creedless religion does beg the question, what holds us together other than coffee after the service? What is the glue, especially through tough times? How do we stay together without common scripture or a singular theology? Our wise pilgrim ancestors identified that glue very simply. Love held their covenant together. They said, love is the doctrine of this church. Love for truth, love for one another. Love creates the power of covenant, a sentiment expressed in a covenant statement from the early 20th century, which is also included in the Gray Hymnal. Again, another reference, number 471, if you wish to see it. Many congregations include this covenant, love is the doctrine of this church, in their worship services each Sunday. If you've been in some other congregations, these may be familiar words to you. Love is the doctrine of this church, 471 in the hymnal. So broadly said, the Pilgrims represent the Unitarian side of our heritage. Early Universalists were equally grounded in covenant. One of our Universalist fathers, Father Hosea Ballou, I love Hosea Ballou, he wrote this: if we agree in love, there is no disagreement that can do us any injury. But if we do not, no other agreement can do us any good. Today, one of our covenants is to side with love, isn't it? Which can lurk in our systems and influence relationships. It's important to keep alert to implicit covenants, especially if they have negative implications. For example, covenants that resist change, or covenants that prompt us to interact mostly with others who are like us, even while we say we are welcoming and we promote diversity. The phrase, "oh, we've always done it like that," it's a signal to interim ministers that there may be some implicit covenant lurking in a system. I'll be listening for that phrase. I'll point out implicit covenants you may not realize are lurking among you. Implicit covenants also, and this is important, are often an indicator of conflict avoidance. Any group can create a covenant, an entire congregation, professional staff, an adult ed class. Covenants have different purposes and different styles. They may express ways of operating together. For example, a covenant that says, to the best of my ability, I will come to this meeting on time, having read the reports sent out ahead of time. That's a behavioral covenant. Or a covenant at the start of a congregational meeting can help the meeting run more smoothly. Another style of covenant can express basic values, such as, I assume best intentions on the part of each person in this group, even if we disagree. During interim ministry, I encourage a congregation to create an all-congregation covenant, perhaps through workshop process, which I, as your interim or UUA consultant, can lead you through. Resulting all-congregation covenants often are repeated in worship services, either spoken or written in written documents. And some of you have asked me a little bit more about all congregation covenants. Generally, they run about 25 to 50 words, easily remembered and easily repeated. They express core values. And I'll be visiting with you more about all congregation covenants as we go on this walk together. There's 4 necessary qualities to covenant. So you who like to keep lists, here you go. First, a covenant is written by the persons under the covenant, not delivered by some outside authority. I don't write a covenant for your committee. Second, a covenant is vital and readily available and easily repeated. We commit to trusting best intentions and observing confidentiality. That's a covenant, right? Third, a covenant should be reviewed often to keep its resilience alive. And fourth, in reviewing, a covenant is always open to change as life changes. I hope this interim ministry will be grounded in covenant. I encourage every group or team to write new covenants or to review existing covenants. There's many methods. There's no one right way. There's a wealth of resources available, and I'm available to help you as well. Now, I do hope we all review our covenant statements more often than a certain Midwestern farmer did in the type of covenant he knew best, the marriage covenant. The farmer's wife complained to him that he never said, "I love you," to her. "Don't worry," he said. "I told you when I married you 30 years ago that I love you. If I ever change my mind, I'll let you know." I call this congregation to create covenants and review them more frequently than every 30 years. I hope I've made my point. Covenants help create compassionate, respectful relationships. I know that living in covenant can be challenging. Any covenant requires trust that our walking partners know where they are going, and they reciprocate trust to stay on the path with us, especially if we see the path differently, even if our paths diverge. Covenant as the ground of accountability invites us to come back in together. We don't all have to love alike. We don't all have to think alike to love alike. It can feel risky, this walking together, especially when we don't agree. Yet in that space of risk lies the core religious experience of transformation. Think about any risks you've taken in your life and how they changed you. In the space of risks, we find the holy. We find grace. We find the capacity to stretch more and more deeply into this experience called life. Unitarian Universalists have at least 400 years of covenant in our heritage. Because covenants are renewable, our communities are also. My friends, doesn't this feel so hopeful? Covenants, they give us the capacity to emerge from brokenness. Many of you know this well. Many of you have continued to walk together through difficult times at church and in your personal lives, when you saw paths differently from others. Our trust for one another, rooted in love, keeps covenants strong. Strong covenants bode well for the future of this liberal religion. Trust helps us move closer to beloved community, right here, right now, in this congregation and in this country that so desperately seeks connection, community, grace, and forgiveness during this most important election season. Keeping covenants is a holy act. Love will guide us. It always has. My friends, may we walk together during this interim ministry, guided by love. May all of this be so. And to sing about our covenants for our closing hymn, I will invite you to rise in body or spirit, number 131 in the gray hymnal, Love Will Guide Us. Let's sing lustily, let's celebrate love.
Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace inside us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
We generally stand for the chalice extinguishing, so I invite you to rise and buy your little calisthenics this morning. Thank you. Please join us. Please join us in our chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish this chalice, but not the warmth of love, the light of truth, or the energy of action. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again. Please remain standing.
Please remain standing for the benediction. I invite you to reach out, touch the arm, the hand, the spirit of those around you and online. For those of you who have come here seeking God, may God go with you. For those of you who have come here seeking life, may life return your affection. For those of you who have come here seeking a better way, may that way be found and the courage to take it step by step. When you leave here this morning, my friends, go in peace. When you return to this sacred space, return in love and in hope and in community. Amen. Shalom. Salam. Namaste. Blessed be. And now you may sit down again while I move to the back of the room.
Yeah, while Reverend Barbara makes her way to the doors to greet you later, please sit down. We have a few announcements this morning and a lovely postlude by Carmen. The Fall Inquirers Series begins today. The Inquirers Series is a set of informal, small group gatherings for visitors and members who would like to know more about various aspects of the fellowship. Today's is more interactive. Instead of a discussion, David Burrows will be giving a tour of our award-winning building. So if you'd like to participate in the tour, feel free to grab some refreshment in Fellowship Hall and then meet by the welcome table around 11:30. The tour is expected to last about 45 minutes. The Inquirers series will resume on October 13th because everyone is encouraged to attend the second transition forum next Sunday, October 6th, after the service for about an hour, 11:30 to 12:30, to discuss more about what interim ministry means and to hear about the startup workshop Friday evening, November 1st and Saturday, November 2nd. So see Reverend Barbara or any transition team member. Any transition team members here? I see one, two. So see any transition team member for more information. Let's see. Speaking of newcomers, if you are new and want to learn more about becoming a member of the fellowship, Path to Membership on Saturday, October 5th from 9 a.m. to noon may be just the thing for you. This session is an excellent opportunity to learn more about Unitarian Universalism and our fellowship. There's no obligation to join, and you can register using Lincoln Connections Weekly or stop by the welcome table. Childcare can be available, but we need to hear from you soon about that. And finally, at 2 p.m. today, here in the sanctuary, the Avalis String Quartet will open our 2024 concert series. Tickets are available online in a variety of ways. Come a bit early to buy at the door, and we can't wait to see you there. So, thank you for your patience, and without further ado, I present, or Carmen presents Aura-Celia.